Hello everybody and welcome to PowerShell for Oracle DBAs. I held this session a few days ago at the DOAG Conference Exhibition in Nuremberg in German. I translated the slides and now record this in English. I'm Andreas Jordan, a consultant at Audix AG for the last 20 years. Dealing mostly with Oracle and SQL servers, and that should answer the question how came I in contact with PowerShell. When administering Microsoft SQL servers, PowerShell is the state-of-the-art method to work with SQL servers, and most folks use the public open source module DBA tools, and some ideas and also some code I've taken from the DBA tools and translated this to Oracle to work with Oracle databases at a lot of clients in the last years. So let's get started. What can you expect here? It's a little bit how do we work with, how does the code look like, how do we use it, and a lot of why. What are the things that I do with PowerShell to work with Oracle databases? It's totally my personal experience. And very simplified examples, you have to transform them to your environment, get some ideas out of this, and work with your own examples. Let's get started with the why PowerShell. I'm a consultant. I go to a client and before starting to work, I cannot tell them, okay, I need this tool and this tool. So I will use things that are available. And PowerShell 5.1 is available on Windows Server 2016 and above and Windows 10. So nearly everybody has a PowerShell on their system. If someone tells you that PowerShell 5.1 is old and will not be developed further, they're right, but still it will be around for the next years and is a good starting point for you. PowerShell 7 is certainly the future, and it runs on Linux and macOS as well. But you have to install it. And as I said, I try to work with things that are available. And in terms of the GUI that you use, there is the PowerShell integrated script environment, either with PowerShell 5.1, and it works. And in my opinion, it's the perfect starting point when you're new to PowerShell. And if you heard bad things about it, that it's a little bit buggy and will not be developed, yes, everything is true. But as a starting point, better than nothing. When you work with PowerShell really intensively, then Visual Studio Code is the next step. But don't learn two things at the same time. First learn PowerShell and then later on Visual Studio Code. That's would be my advice. And why PowerShell? PowerShell is a object-oriented programming language because it's based on .NET. So I have loops, error handling, logging, everything that I need. And most importantly, I can run my scripts line by line. I use this very often because I can develop while running already parts of the program, and that is very nice. So next point is, what requirements must be met? Do I have to install something to get this all to work? Probably not. Because probably you have an Oracle client installed on your machine, and if it's 19C or a bit older, then you probably have the one file that we need, the oracle.managedataAccess.dll. It's probably up and running there. You can find it if you go to your client, the Oracle Home, and then underneath this, it's the odp.net managed common path. In case you're on a newer version, then you probably have only NuGet packages in this folder. You can use them, just unpack them and use them. But also, if you want to have the newest version, then NuGet is the future. NuGet is the Microsoft package management and is mainly targeted on for developers who develop .NET applications and need database access. But we don't need all that, and we don't need NuGet client tools or something like this. Just download the package from the website, change the file name ending to .zip, and then you can just extract it, and you'll find in the lib folder then the DLL you need. And if you want to use this with PowerShell 7 on Windows or Linux, then use the package named core. Next question, how do we use this in PowerShell? That's just one line. PowerShell has the command add type with the parameter path, and you provide the full path to the DLL, run the command, and here we go. PowerShell reads this file, and you can use all the classes inside, like Oracle Connection, Oracle Command, and Oracle Data Adapter. So without installing, or probably without installing anything on the system, you can just use this. And you can start, just Google for the classes, and you'll find a documentation how to use them. You can start right away. I would suggest to take one step further to help you with not having so many lines of code. So I suggest to write own wrapper commands, but you don't have to write them your own. Later on, you'll find or in the description, you'll find the link to my GitHub repo where you can download just these two commands. As I said before, DBA Tools is the state-of-the-art interface to SQL servers, and I kind of borrowed the names of the commands and most of the code, and to get it to work with Oracle. So I named them Connect-OraInstance to connect to the instance, and then Invoke-OraQuery to execute a query. And now, let's have a look how it works. So here is my demo system. It's just a Windows server, and on some other machines I have Oracle databases. So we will, let's make this a little bit bigger. We will start by adding the type. Perfect, works. And by sourcing these two files that contain the code for these two commands. Okay, so we're ready to go. These 3 lines will be the first 3 lines of all your PowerShell scripts that use Oracle. And here we go. So next part is let's connect to the instance. I just have an Express edition, so I connect to my XEPDB1. You can use TNS names, but I haven't set this up. So I put my instance name in a variable just to make it easier. And to connect, I need not only the instance name, but username and password. And here's the first pro of PowerShell compared to other means, other scripts. I have this get credential, and what it does, it opens up a Windows pop-up who asked me for the password, and I can type in my password, and it's not displayed. I'm a consultant. Nowadays I work together with clients in online sessions, and I want them to be able to put in their password without me knowing the password. And even if I just run this credential variable to output the input, I just see that it's a secure string. So the password is secured by the Windows encryption RP. And this variable can even be saved to disk with export CLI XML, and also imported with import CLI XML. And the password in clear text is never written to a file. So I will use the instance and my credential, and I programmed this Connect-OraInstance so that it has an optional parameter as this DBA, so I can connect as this DBA. You sure can include other functionality as you like. If I execute this, the connection is made, and I have the connection object. This can be used now with Invoke-OraQuery. So again, I save the query into a variable and use my connection and this query with Invoke-OraQuery. And very important, the output of this command will be saved to a variable. Because like when you use SQL Plus and write a query, and then the result is comes out on the screen, and whoops, you cannot really see anything if you have too many lines coming back. Here, nothing is displayed. I can display the data. Like here, you have the same effect. It's just scrolling by. And let's stop this. What I like with PowerShell is that I have a command that is called outGridView, and I have a nice grid like in SQL Developer. If you want to make this a little bit bigger, it's Control Plus, and I can make this a little bit bigger so that it fits better on your screen. The good thing about this is that I have a filter. That's a kind of a full text filter. You see, every key press, it filters down, and it's like a like, but with a like filters just on one column. Here it filters on every column, so even if it's not the name where it's optimi, but here the optimization is in the description. It comes back, and this is I think it's more flexible than running queries again and again with different values until I figure out which lines I would like to have. So I can quickly get the data here displayed. Okay, sure, you can say, okay, that's more or less what the SQL developer can do as well. Why should I use PowerShell? So let's move one step further, and the preparation I've done before. What I do is I have some default parameters here, target parameters that I want to compare the live values with. Live values I get from these two instances with this query, and then I do kind of a PowerShell magic. Don't want to go into details here. And then I can output the comparison in two different ways. So let's just run this and see what we have. This is again my little grid view with a comparison. And here I can see for all the parameters that are in my target file, the target value and the values from these two sources. And if I add more sources, no problem, the code is flexible so that more columns will be added. And I also see where the difference is. For those of you who think, oh, I can do this on Linux, this is a Windows-only feature, as this grid is only supported on Windows. But for all the Linux people, this here, this is just filtering for differences and then formatting this as a table. This is possible on Linux as well. Okay, let's go back to the slides and have a little look inside of Connect-OraInstance. What is there running in the back? So basically, we build a connection string and then just use this connection string with the constructor of this class. And we have a connection object, open the connection, and we're ready to go. And if you think of passwords, what is not here on the slide, we use another class. It's a connection string builder class, which handles all the escaping special characters in the password, like if you use semicolons or quotation marks. So that it's really easy and totally flexible with all kinds of passwords. And I also want to show a little bit insight in Invoke-OraQuery. There are different methods to execute queries with the provided classes. I use this method because, especially when working like in administering databases, I work with small data, so I don't have to loop through data. I can just say, give me all at once, fetch all data at once. And this makes this very easy. So I just use a command object that I get out of the connection. And then I use a data adapter. And the data adapter can then execute the command and fill a data set. And as you can see, the data set has nothing to do with Oracle. It's, the data set is database independent. So with the same method, I can connect to MySQL databases, Postgres, whatever. You will find more examples in my GitHub repo. So with the data adapter fill method, the data set is filled. It returns the number of rows filled if you need it, and you have the data. This command does not only return this data, but can return this data in different formats or types. We have a as parameter with some options. Because what is returned here is the data set. I can get the whole data set, which can contain more than one table. And I can also get the individual tables or the individual rows out of the first table. I rarely use these three. I most times use the other two options that I programmed there. Most times I use PS Object, so this is uses some C# code to mainly strip off the DB null values, which has this special type DB null if they are in the data set, and translate them to normal null values. So I don't get any metadata. I just get the data. And in some cases, I just need a single value. Single value means that it extracts the first column. So I don't have objects anymore, but single values. Like if you do a count star, and then you don't need the column name. You just want the value of the count star, and that's the perfect fit for this single value. There are three aspects that I want to show in demos: loops, error handling, and logging. Loops are, for me, the biggest advantage of PowerShell compared to SQL Developer, SQL Plus, whatever you do. Because sure, you can have loops in PLSQL, even anonymous PLSQL code, but you can only run the complete code. You code a batch and send this to the database, and then the whole loop runs. With PowerShell, I can run line by line, and I can run part of the first loop, or then the first loop and then the second loop, step by step, seeing that everything is working as I expect, maybe changing a little bit, and then running the next loop. That helps me in developing a lot. And furthermore, I have the progress bar. So if I loop through 10 partitions that I have to reorganize, I have a progress bar and can tell, okay, 2 partitions are reorganized already. It took 2 minutes. Then I can say, okay, it will be finished in on this time. Error handling is done with try-catch. Not big difference to begin exception end in PLSQL. And with logging, I personally use the PS framework by Friedrich Weinmann. a Microsoft employee, and yeah, he wrote a nice framework that I will show you in the demo. So demo time again. Here we are back, and I want to show you how loops work. So my example is updating statistics. Let's first retrieve the required data. Let's get all the data from DBA tables, and I can filter that to just have my demo schema Stack Overflow and output some information about when was the tables last analyzed. Okay, here we go. What I also like to do with PowerShell, I like to use out grid view to have kind of a GUI interface. So if I run this code, what it does first, it displays all distinct usernames, and I can select this and maybe this, and then press OK, and then I get all the tables from these owners. Sure, I can say, oh, I don't like this. I can here filter and say, okay, I just want to have Stack Overflow. And now I can say, okay, let me sort by last analyzed. And then say, okay, I want to analyze these and maybe this. The selection is like you know it from files in Windows with Shift and Control. And then I hit OK, and I have my selected tables. I can output them. These tables I have selected. And now, yeah, I have some code. I will not go into detail again. Some code to set up the progress bar, starting the loop, updating the progress bar, and here constructing the query. As you can see, I cannot only run select queries, but with Invoke-OraQuery, I can just run any batch. Let's start this. And now I have my progress bar. Yeah, you probably noticed my start sleep seconds 5, just to make this slow enough to have a look at the progress bar. I show which table I'm processing, how many seconds remaining. So I like this a lot. It helps me to project the end date. Okay, and it's finished. Next demo is error handling. As my example here is retrieving the time of the last record in all the tables using creation date. So let's get all the table names. You see here I have this as single value because I select table name, and yeah, I really want just the table names, not the header. So if I execute this, I don't know which was the column name, but I have only the table names. Let's first show you how an arrow looks like in my implementation of Invoke-OraQuery. Let's have this query here. Select max creation date from Stack Overflow link types, because in the table link types there is no creation date. And so if I run this query, I get a warning, and query could not be executed or creation date invalid identifier. So this is just the error message that is coming back from Oracle. I don't like a lot of red. I just like a little warning. But in case you want to have a real error in PowerShell to use error handling, like catching this error later on, you have to use enable exception. And if I run this, yeah, I get a lot of red code, but mainly there's the same text in both cases. So what I want to show you is that I run this. Let's first run this and then I'll explain. If I run this code, you'll see that it loops through all the tables, and for 3 tables it writes down the error. But just as a warning, and at the end it tells me the result of the other. What I can do here now is I can play a little bit around with how many errors is okay until I want to fail the complete execution. So I can set max error to 2. I know we have 3 errors, max error 2. What does it look like? Now I see the error message, but then I see a real error, too many errors, and the process stops. So after this third table, no other table is processed and no result is written. Everything is stopped. And last example for now, logging. I use this logging framework. I import the module. Here's the command to install the module. Yeah, if you are not an administrator, you can still install this module in the user scope. Okay, it's imported. It takes a little bit. And then I can use these write PSF message command. I can set a level like verbose, host, warning, and a message. Verbose messages are not printed on the screen, but we'll find this later on. Okay, we just use the same example as before. Get the table names and just run this code again. More or less the same output as before. Sometimes you run run a script and it produces some errors, and you would like to have all the verbose messages so you have a better idea where it failed. With this messaging framework or logging framework, you can do it. If you still have the PowerShell process open, you can just use get PFS message without grid view, and here's our first verbose message, and I have included some debug messages, some verbose messages, and here we also see the warning messages, and I have everything and can analyze why my script is failing. If the PowerShell process is closed, I can still get it. Let's first run this. This is the path. It's like my user app data roaming, Windows PowerShell, PS framework logs. There it is. Let's execute this with invoke item, and here you'll find all the files. All errors have XML files, and all the other messages are in CSV files. So I can also analyze them later on. And they're automatically aged out, so I don't know how many days later it's in the config. Okay, here we go again to the slides, because I like Excel, and PowerShell and Excel is a very good fit. I use the import Excel module by Doug Finke from New York. Here's the GitHub repo. This module does not require Excel to be installed. It brings its own .NET class with it. This is some sample code that would run the select star from the parameter, and with some little more PowerShell code, I can get an Excel. I can not show you this live because I don't have Excel installed on the demo system, but I've made some screenshots. This is what it would look like. You get a real Excel table with autofilter and everything else from this little PowerShell code. And I recently ran a performance analysis at one of our clients, and I used the data in the RWR report tables and extracted the data from that table, did some PowerShell magic, and pushed this to Excel to have kind of a nice overview, even with notes including the statement behind the columns with the SQL ID. I like time graphs, and with PowerShell and some loops, it's totally easy to generate for, let's say, 20 different SQL statements, graphs for 10 different aspects. I have in total 200 diagrams. I don't have to build them on my own. I just have to program the loops, 2 loops, and then I just have to look at the Excel, scroll through all the 200 diagrams until I find something interesting that, where I think, oh, I have to have a deeper look into this statement and this parameter. So that is very easy for me. So what else could I talk about? Like storage of data in JSON, processing CLOBs using bind variables. PowerShell offers many possibilities. At the DOAG, I did not have more time than 45 minutes, so I could not show more demos, but here we are lucky and I can have a look at some other demos that are here in the demo file. This is the code for import Excel. You can try it home. Next will be exporting data to JSON with ConvertTo-Json. Let me create a temp folder and a temp file name. Let's get this data. This is our sample query. I can just convert this data to JSON and set it as the content of this file. And if I open this file, it opens with Notepad. It's just a text file. You see, it's JSON. The nice thing about JSON is numbers are numbers, strings are strings. And we don't have time here, but time values are also real time values. And I can just read the data again, so get the content and convert it from JSON. And if I output this to my grid view, I just have exactly the same data I had before. So I can ask a client to send me this file and I can display it. Okay, let's remove the demo folder. Creation and use of a filter. Yeah, filter is like a lightweight command. If I have a lot of queries I want to execute and I don't want to write a lot of code, I can just use my connection and say, okay, whenever I use out Ora grid view, I use I run the invoke command with this connection and this query and then output this. So if I run this once, I can run this, and if I have my $5 parameter, I can just use DBA tables. Takes a little bit because I pull all this data from the database, and here are all my data. I can then filter this and have my bit bigger, my Stack Overflow data here ready. Yeah, DBA segments and so on and so forth. Processing LOBs is, I like using PowerShell for this because if you ever try to export LOBs with SQL Plus or SQL Developer, it is possible, but not easy and not on a big scale, I think. So let's create folder and file names. Let's run Stack Overflow posts with a certain ID. This data has a column body, and let's see how many characters. Yeah, a lot of characters. If you want to know what's inside there, okay, I can put it on the screen. Yeah, this is, as you can see, a question from Stack Overflow. Let's display it a little bit better in a web browser. This is big code that was in that column, and I have exported it. Just if you want to look at the original, here it is. This is the official Stack Overflow website. I have the data from this website. Okay, more fun with CLOBs. If you do performance analysis or analysis and want to get the SQL statements, then the SQL statements are, CLOBs. So I'll extract the data from $4 SQL, and let's output this in the grid view, bigger. That's possible as well. I have all the statements that are running here. And I can export this data then, let's say I filter a little bit, so I just want to export where SQL full text match Stack Overflow, so only my Stack Overflow queries. And then I can just write this to a folder, and now I have a folder with the queries, and I can open them and have all my queries here. And I can even, this is part 3, save it to another table. Yeah, we use bind variables, or can use bind variables. I have a create table statement and an insert statement, and you'll see here the bind variables. I use bind parameters by name that is supported by Oracle, and this the classes I use. So this is my statement. Yeah, let's create the table. Let's get from $SQL SQLID last active time, etc., etc. So I get all the data, and now I loop through this data and just build a. This is a hash table with all the bind parameters. Yeah, here by name. This is all these are the names, and then I can use parameter values and have the insert SQL with these parameters executed. So I can run this, and the data with the CLOB. This is the CLOB is inserted, no problem. I can just query it again and show it so that it's proved, yes, it's there. Okay, well, let's drop the table after the demo. Okay, here we're at the end of all my demos. You can try this all at home. And so I'm at the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. On the link there, and the QR code is the link there. You'll find this presentation in German and English, the demo code in German and English, and in the repo also the Connect-OraInstance and Invoke-OraQuery commands, and a lot of information around this. So yeah, thanks for listening, and goodbye.